So not only did Donald Trump's personal attorney, who's now become the lead federal prosecutor in the Eastern District of Virginia with zero prosecutorial experience, show up to the grand jury to secure the indictment against New York Attorney General Letitia James alone. She had nobody there by her side from her office, the prosecutorial office, a proud prosecutorial office, the Eastern District of Virginia. But we also learned that she really didn't tell anybody at the Justice Department that she was going in alone to try to get this indictment from the grand jury, which she ultimately secured. So according to the reporting by CNN and the Journal and others, Attorney General Pam Bondi was not even informed that now the interim lead federal prosecutor in the Eastern District of Virginia, again, Trump's former personal attorney, Lindsey Halligan, was going in to get that indictment. Like, that is entirely unheard of. I mean, you would normally, especially in a case like this, need to run it by Main Justice. There would also be a number of other ethical concerns and checks that you would have to go through if you were ever going to do something like this. I mean, it's unprecedented. I mean, you're going after a sitting attorney general of a state like New York Attorney General Letitia James. Again, well, after Donald Trump posts on social media, you know, Pam, Lindsey, you got to go after my political enemies. This is getting very bad for my reputation. So one of the questions that we're going to see in these cases that are going to arise through vindictive prosecution motions to dismiss, outrageous government conduct motions, grand jury abuse motions to dismiss, is what the hell happened here. That'll be subject almost certainly to discovery on a rocket docket expedited basis. And where someone like a Lindsey Halligan has no prior federal prosecutorial experience, I wonder what the hell is even going to come out in this discovery. Her direct messages to Donald Trump via Truth Social. We know that's how Donald Trump's communicating. Donald Trump's direct order to her. Is she going to have to take the witness stand in these cases? I think there's a lot of questions that are going to be asked her way, and very soon. I could relate this also to this earlier this week. James Comey had his arraignment. He was there with his lawyer, Patrick Fitzgerald, a former top federal prosecutor. I mean, you don't get much more experienced and as good as a federal prosecutor and now criminal defense lawyer as Patrick Fitzgerald as a lawyer in this case. And in that case, Fitzgerald said, we don't even know who person 1 and person 3 is in that indictment, because the only two people it could be, we've already know they're not saying what the government claims they're saying. And also, how's the government now just dealing with potential issues of classified information and how it's handled after they file this case versus before the case is brought in its normal course? Remember, Lindsey Halligan in the Comey matter was asked by the magistrate and by the judge, like, what's even this document that you gave me? Why is it misnumbered? Halligan apparently didn't even know where to stand in the courtroom on the Comey case. Then the sloppiness on the New York Attorney General Letitia James case. She said that Letitia James lives in Brooklyn, New Jersey. I mean, the amount of typos on a very short document and errors that are already there are pretty wild. And I just found this to be incredibly interesting as well, that the indictment does not even cite the purported second mortgage rider. Word for word, it mischaracterizes what a second mortgage rider actually says versus quote the language directly. I guess the claim of the case is that New York Attorney General Letitia James had the second rental property. She said it was a second residence, but she rented it out to another family. And as a result, she made, over the course of a 30-year mortgage, getting slightly favorable terms, $16,000, or basically the equivalent of about $600 a year in savings based on deviating from a second mortgage rider, which when I read the language, I don't even know what this case could possibly be about because it doesn't say what it says in the indictment on the underlying writer. In any event, this thing's a mess. I'm going to bring in Harry Litman to de-mess it. Former top federal prosecutor. He was the United States attorney for the Western District of Pennsylvania, meaning the top lawyer there, and one of the top lawyers at the Justice Department and Main Justice in D.C. So why don't we start, Harry, with how unprecedented it is not to show up with anybody, but then not to tell Main Justice at all that you're doing this, that the Attorney General learned about it on the news? Come on, that's never happened.
Ben, it pains me not to be able to respond to your question to me, but I'm sorry. This cannot be demessed. It's the most colossal mess I have ever seen. Let's start with her experience level, okay? In federal offices, you would go through all this training and maybe be there a year before you would go into a grand jury, where, by the way, the rules are extensive, and if you mess up, and God knows she has to have messed up, the whole case could be jeopardized. This is like, okay, you've ridden a plane before, Lindsey. Why don't you go drive this one? Or, you took French 1. Why don't you go handle this high level meeting with the French ambassador? So this, for starters, she is there for a second on her own. Look, when I was U.S. attorney, I already had a lot of prosecutorial experience, but you don't let a U.S. attorney hang out to drive. There would be people, assistants and stuff with you. So that speaks loud volumes to me that, as was the case with the Comey indictment, the whole office thinks this stinks and she can't get a single person to help. Remember, in the Comey arraignment, she had to dredge up a couple people from North Carolina. Nobody in the 5 floors of the EDVA was ready to do it. And then this third detail. I've never heard this third detail. I don't quite know even how to incorporate it, not telling Justice that you're about to indict Letitia James. I find it, we're weighing incredibly implausible events. But to me, it's just more implausible that she would truly be acting on her own than anything. What could she be? So either, seems to me, and all of this unprecedented as remember, before Trump came in, there was never even communications with the White House and the DOJ on individual cases. So the person, by the way, what you know to do before anything like this happens, even like a quarter of the profile of this case, you call the Deputy Attorney General's office and they know. Had I done this, I would have expected 10 minutes later to get the call from the deputy being fired. They can't be blindsided about this. And yet, even as this was reported, they're sort of chuffed about it. So something's off. It could be that Bondi knows and they're feigning she doesn't for her own deniability. That would make Halligan really the sacrificial lamb here. Oh, thanks, Lindsey, for signing that indictment for us. And we sure hope you don't get disbarred for it. So that's one possibility is, with conspiring with someone like the deputy or whatever, they said, let's just not tell the Attorney General for the Attorney General's sake. It could be, and we've seen this happen at the end of when he was trying to steal the election. It could be that it's a direct pipeline from Halligan to Trump. And remember, she's represented him before. And yeah, given the way things go, that nothing could be more improper than that. But so it could be that Trump is the one who said, yeah, just go do this, or he's the one that she told that she was going to do it. And if that's the case, given the way things are now, the corrupt, unlawful way they are now, Trump's say-so or acknowledgement would be enough. I find it basically of all the different impossible hypotheses, the lowest on the poll to me is that she just really, got a notion in her head. Oh, won't mommy and daddy be proud when I bring home, then without even telling them the indictment of the Attorney General of New York. One final point I want to make. These kinds of indictments of political officials are particularly sensitive, and they often have accusations of political bias and the like. And you often have to try them in jurisdictions where the defendant is from. For all of these reasons and more, there's always been what to many people's lights is the most vaunted, celebrated section in the entire DOJ, namely the public integrity section housed in the criminal division. They're the specialists at just these kinds of things. Well, the public integrity section started at 30 on January 10th, when Trump came in. Remember, they were the ones that Bove closed in a room and said, somebody here is going to have to sign this dismissal motion of Adams, lie to the court, or everyone, gets fired. They have been so beaten and roughed up, the ranks of 30, they now have two public integrity lawyers. I mean, so I think that whole, not just check, but source of counsel and protocol and what you do, including in a grand jury, this when this transcript comes out, I can only imagine how embarrassing it will be. That's just gone now. There's no public integrity section. So the whole thing starts at a pretty weird spot, and it gets weirder and weirder, and then weirdest still. And we don't know. And until we do know, there's just no explanation that sits easily, and is her doing it on her own, sua sponte, without telling people back at Maine Justice, which is, by the way, like 3 miles, away, just across the river. That is the single weirdest, not most sinister. They're doing terrible stuff. That's the single weirdest detail I think I've heard in 2025.
There's a great deal of trust that is placed on prosecutors in that grand jury room because there's no criminal defense lawyer there. The target's lawyers aren't there. There's no judge in the room. So you have all of the trappings of authority. You are in front of a group of individuals tasked with service to find probable cause, or to find it's not the beyond a reasonable doubt standard. The judge isn't making rulings on evidentiary issues at that stage because there's no judge in the room. So you're there with the grand jury, and based on your prosecutorial ethics, based on the DOJ manual, based on state knowledge,
right?
You are also guided by not just, can I get this indictment now, but can I prove beyond a reasonable doubt in the future? Yeah. So you have to not hide the ball from a grand jury. If you didn't tell the grand jury some key facts about it, if you hid, for example, the exculpatory evidence in Comey that actually the two people who we know of said the opposite of what you claim they say, and you don't tell a grand jury, but you put on an FBI witness who tells a part of the story and not the main part that is exculpatory, it's fairly easy to get that indictment if you don't tell the full story. And similarly, if you go with New York Attorney General Letitia James, you put an agent on who can testify and kind of to hearsay, and you walk through the questions in 30 minutes and have the FBI agent say, yes, I've reviewed the file. This is what I found.
Here's what that said. Yeah.
But then I don't ask, but what does the second rider say? And does this inform you at all? It's not hard to get the indictment, but we're going to find out soon, Harry, right? Like in the Comey matter, in 20 days, the vindictive prosecution motion gets filed. So we're going to learn very soon what happened in that grand jury room. Similarly, in New York Attorney General Letitia James, we're going to learn. And the thing is, if you're willing, and I'll let you get the final word here, of course, if you're willing to go alone and not tell people what the hell actually happened in that room with the court transcript. We get that.
I mean, it's like a fantasy, a bad dream from a Hitchcock movie. You're all of a sudden in the grand jury room and you've got to say stuff. And as you say, there's all kinds of ways you can go awry. And that transcript, you know, there's good form, bad form. There's ways you can be improper. And there are ways in which you can just open yourself up to killer arguments if and when things go to trial, all of which she doesn't have, you know, as you pointed out. She doesn't know how to say, she doesn't know, she says Brooklyn, New Jersey, but she also doesn't know where to stand. She introduced herself, Lindsey Halligan. That would be Lindsey Halligan for the United States. I mean, she is, you know, it's the same as having like an 11-year-old and that she doesn't know anything. And that, yes, so that will show up. I do want to say that when they file, when you know Fitzgerald files, and then James will be arraigned, I think about within 9 or 10 days, they will make this motion and they'll ask for discovery, and the White House and the administration will freak out then and try to prevent it. But to me, you know, we've talked a lot about these motions never succeed. Except here, where it's like, you know, tailor-made is the perfect, compelling facts. And that means they're going to have a very strong argument for discovery. And at every turn, starting back in, you know, when Bove was the brass-knuckled enforcer, being the White House, are so paranoid about having information come out. So if Nachmanoff orders, that's the Comey judge. Let's have some discovery and exactly, you know, the question here, and it's going to be the same with James. I want to make a quick legal point, actually. If they, the real reason, and this is what selective prosecution will determine, the real reason they brought it was because Trump wanted to do it for political retribution. I've never seen a case a tenth as strong for that as this one. It doesn't matter whether technically the charges with Tish James are a little bit foggy to us still. But this might be at best first, an incredibly trivial case that no U.S. Attorney's Office would never bring. But even if what she filed was different from the statement, doesn't matter. It's already a constitutional violation of the most important things of DOJ, if the actual command comes down from Donald Trump. And that means there's going to be a motion for discovery. And I don't know, how are you going to prove it? You have a really good kind of way of thinking, and you have a right to prove your case, in this case, that this is what happened with Trump. You know, you can't use hearsay, I don't think. So you can't even have Lindsey Halligan say, what did Trump tell you? So it's only by way of saying that you're right, that they'll bring it in 20 days, but what will then ensue, I predict, is a really very no holds barred battle over getting discovery, which I think the district court will order, and then we'll have emergency, the drill we all know too well.
There you have it. Harry Litman runs the Talking Feds YouTube channel, the Talking Feds Substack, and the Talking Feds podcast. Right now, search Talking Feds on YouTube and subscribe. Thanks, Harry.
Thank you, Ben.
Love this video? Support independent media and unlock exclusive content, ad-free videos, and custom emojis by becoming a paid member of our YouTube channel today. You can also gift memberships to others. Let's keep growing together.